Um, I think you're actually really great at that. I'd love to just be your wing person. Thank you.
All right. All right. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force Law and Justice Council meeting for December 16th. We will begin with our land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people, who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We have some special guests here today. We have the first thing on our agenda is something that we would need to vote to approve, which is our committee calendar. And Jill, did I hear that that's not really ready to present?
There is nothing to present. It's
Okay.
self-explanatory.
We will move on then. We're going to put off number 3, which is to vote to approve our year-end report until we have a quorum. So we will move to number 4, which I've been looking forward to. Elizabeth Boyle is here to give us a report on All Hands Whatcom reentry event. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. I was there. It was a fantastic event. I learned a lot, and I really am looking forward to this. If you could take it from here.
Thanks so much, Peter. And Heather, did you want to share some opening remarks?
I would love to.
Thanks, Heather.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Heather Flaherty. I am a co-chair with Peter Frazier of the Incarceration Task Force. And my day job, I have the privilege of being a part of the Chuckanut Health Foundation. And the Chuckanut Health Foundation, in the last year, well, actually the last many years, we've been really involved in figuring out how can we reduce our opioid epidemic and make sure people are getting care they need. And there's quite an overlap, right, with that and with incarceration. And as part of some of our efforts around community awareness, Elizabeth Boyle has been an incredible leader in just helping our community understand all of the different aspects that go into substance use disorder, incarceration, and all of the overlapping issues that we have discussed at this task force for years. And I see Daryl's here today too. I'm going to let Elizabeth introduce Daryl, but Daryl is just an extraordinary person, and it's such a gift to have you here at the table this morning. Thank you for coming. And Daryl hosted with us this summer the reentry simulation, which many of you attended. And I think there will be time for those of you who attended to share some insights about what you learned and experienced. And there's talk already about wanting to host something again. I think a couple of points I want to make are that we know that incarceration doesn't work for a lot of people. And how do we know that? Because they leave our jail and then they end up stuck in systems that are not supportive or caring and end up back in our jail. We call that recidivism, right? We see high recidivism rates. And our whole point here is how do we lower those recidivism rates? And if people are ending up in incarceration, how can we make sure that they're on a path to rehabilitation and support and meaningful work and opportunities after their experience? And Daryl's simulation really showed and built some empathy, I think, around the barriers people run into once they've interfaced with the justice system. So I'm really excited to have these learnings here today at this table. This is an opportunity for all of us who missed that event to hear some of those insights. and have a conversation about how we can incorporate those community learnings into our work moving forward. So Elizabeth, I'd love to hand it to you. Thank you so much for coming and orchestrating the conversation today.
Thanks, Heather. This is probably my favorite body of work this last year, and it's mostly because of the people that are on this call here with me today. So I'm going to introduce Maya, Ali, Daryl, and Joey, and each of them will share a little bit about why we brought this to Whatcom County. Daryl, I hope he can share just a little bit of his magic. He is the mastermind behind the whole event. And then Ali and Joey will share a little bit about the insights and learnings that came out of it. And then I'll wrap it up with a little bit of like, what are some next steps? And then we want to leave the bulk of our time for some questions and answers. And for sure, for anybody that attended the event as well to offer their contributions. So let's get started with Maya, and Daryl will share a little bit about the reason we brought it to Whatcom County and the basic structure of it.
Morning, Daryl. I guess I'll start by sort of citing out how I heard about the fact that Kitsap County had some agencies who had put together a reentry simulation, and I was in a meeting that wasn't the primary focus of the meeting, but I wrote a note to myself and I was like, I got to find out who these people are. And so I sent some emails and eventually got directed to Christina and Daryl as the folks who put on the Kitsap program. And when I heard a little bit about what they were doing, I was like, well, we need to, my goal was wanting judges and prosecutors to hear the stories and experiences of people going through reentry so they could really have some empathy, more empathy about the difficulties that are real in the process of exiting jail and trying to resume life. But so I wanted it to come, and I just knew that Chucknut Health Foundation maybe had like funding and organizational skills to make this happen. And so I reached out. I think I had lunch with Heather and mentioned it, and then it just she was encouraging, and somehow they got Elizabeth involved, and from there we were able to kind of grow it. And as I saw, I mean, my focus was judges and prosecutors because that immediately affects my work and the offers that are made to my clients and the sort of decisions that are made when folks come back, maybe having not been successful after an attempt in the community to re-enter. And but it was obvious to me that it's such a bigger community that needs to know about this, including service providers and the people who are funding programs. And it's just everyone here who's touched by the criminal legal system needs to hear these voices and stories and then weave that empathy into the work that we do. So I met Daryl and Christina, and I am so grateful to have done so. And I hope we'll do great work together going forward. But Daryl, why don't you let this group know what it is I learned when I got to sit down and talk with you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you to the IPRFT team. Excited to see a collaboration of a bunch of upstream folks, systems folks who actually can make the decisions in regards to change. Good to see you, Maya, Elizabeth, Joey, all of those that helped with the simulation. I want to give a shout out to our partner. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of the Up From Slavery Initiative, and our partners, Kitsap Strong and Christina Rourke. What's different with this or with what you all have in Whatcom County as opposed to what we have? We were actually community organizations, citizens who attempted to look at this problem from a different perspective. And we found this program from the Department of Justice And myself being formerly incarcerated, probably would consider myself a subject matter expert on reentry, if you will. We got together and we took out some things and added some things to make it more substantive. And we partnered with two of our tribes out here to put on a reentry simulation. And I got to tell you, initially, I find myself oftentimes in a room full of women, which is no shot on women, but you guys are the most educated, the most powerful. And initially, it was a struggle, right? Almost for my masculinity, if you will, in a sense. But I had to stand on the fact that I knew what I was talking about because I experienced it. And it was tough going initially because a lot of people didn't really understand the dynamics of reentry. They didn't understand that you guys talked about the drug reduction meeting that's going on. They didn't understand that drug use, most of the mental health issues, and most of the homeless issues are a direct result of unsuccessful reentry. Because most of those people who are homeless or who are mentally challenged because of drugs or mentally imbalanced, those people probably been to jail. And it's a big problem when we look at incarceration on a deeper level. We have to understand that it's not about rehabilitation. It's not about crime and punishment. It's actually about free labor, supported and backed by the U.S. government in the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. We have to look at the fact that, and someone mentioned it earlier, they've created a word for it. They call it recidivism. And what's happening is they're trading retirement that some of you all benefit from in the future. They're trading retirement for recidivism. They're criminalizing poverty and drug addiction and mental wellness. They're criminalizing it to keep the system going. We were fortunate enough to have, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Miss Jane Elliott. She's an educator. And one of the things that she said that I remember so vividly is that if the criminal legal system wasn't making money, they would have abolished it a long time ago. So if we look at it from that approach, you guys seem like some well-centered people. You know, I know you don't necessarily believe that slavery is a good thing, but that's exactly what we have here. And I'm excited to be in a space we are all talking about how to not necessarily change the system, because I don't think they're going to change the Constitution, but how to work around it. We also have to understand that Department of Corrections is the second highest budget in the state, next to the military. So we put on that reentry simulation. We're connected to some people. We connected with Maya, then Elizabeth, and we worked for a whole year putting it together, getting all the logistics in place. And I usually find myself in a space where it's a predominantly white audience, and I have the ability, not the ability, I have the honor of being able to connect with folks that I never met before, and try to illustrate a different picture for them to take a look at. Because you all know someone that are impacted by the systems, and you just want them to get it right. And oftentimes we think it's a lack of effort, or it's a lack of them not trying. Actually, the system is designed in itself to trip you up. Excited to see Jason here. Are you the one who was on the crutches that day? Who was the person that was on the crutches that day? Was that Jason, the city council person?
No, that was Michael. Yeah.
Okay. Excited to see him there. We have a picture of him during that simulation. And Wacom really impressed me. You guys citizens really impressed me, the staff, the team. We have a picture of him on the floor with his crutches on the floor, actually digging to the efforts and trying to make it through. What we also noticed which happens quite often, is that a lot of people were in jail by choice. A lot of people chose to stay in jail, whether they had the money to bail out or not, because the system just makes it so difficult. So I'm extremely grateful for the partnership. We've actually put on 2 more simulations since Wacom, and we have one scheduled for the legislators in Olympia sometime in early summer. So this is a movement. I think from what I've heard and what I've been reading, you guys are way ahead of everyone else. If we had our systems people working as hard as you all do, we would be farther along. But this is just a community, 2 community organizations trying to spread this around. So grateful to be in you all's presence, honored and excited. Hopefully I could learn some things to take back to our leadership and our commissioners, so that we can move other initiatives like this forward. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Daryl. It's exciting to hear about Olympia. That's a wonderful step forward. So Daryl is as we said, the magic behind all of this. And just to give a little clarity of the structure of the day, Daryl does a beautiful job in making sure that we're continually centering the voice of people with lived experience, and made sure that we had 20 people that had experienced time in jail or prison with us that morning. And he welcomed them in beautifully. It was magical to watch Daryl ease people's spirits and their energy as they walked in. And that was, I think, transformational for the entire experience, to make sure we're inviting people in with a lived experience and making sure that they felt that love and appreciation for their time and energy and experience. So Daryl welcomed them all in. And then the rest of the participants, we had about somewhere 125 participants or so, and they each got an identity. So they were given, a name, a background, like you've just been released from jail, you have 2 kids, you don't have any ID, just kind of like, here's a real life story. And then we would go through 4 weeks of like 15-minute periods. So like, okay, Kayla, you got to go figure out how to get your ID and go stand in a long line. So everyone had different scenarios. And then in between each of those 15 minutes, Daryl would sit us down and we'd all be like, oh my gosh, that was so hard. And he would offer some incredible wisdom. And so his words really guided the entire day. And then at the end of those 4 periods, we had a debrief session. We had a small panel of different system providers throughout the county. And in the afternoon, we had a conversation. Like everyone had at different tables, and we had different community conversations, so that people could start thinking, like maybe Raylene would be there with Birdie and it would be like, what are we going to do in our own lives to move this work forward? So that's kind of the structure of the day, just to make sure you have some sense of what that is. And Allie and Joey, I wanted to make sure they spoke next. Allie had some really profound, I felt like, takeaways, and so we wanted to make sure she was here from the YWCA. And Joey has been an amazing leader with the folks with lived experience, and he has helped us with a couple of conversations. So we wanted to make sure he shared as well. Allie and Joey, can you share a little bit about your takeaways and learnings?
Yes, thank you for having me. Like Elizabeth said, I'm Allie. I work at the YWCA here in Bellingham. I was asked to share my experiences at the simulation, and I don't feel like I had 1 or 2 things that really stuck out, but it was more so just this overwhelming awareness of how wildly inaccurate my perception was. I work in housing, and the clients that we serve have very similar barriers. And so I went into it feeling fairly educated about the system. And kind of what Elizabeth explained, the persona that was given to me when I did go into the simulation, I was someone who had a college degree, and I had stable housing, and I had all of my IDs. And so I went into it kind of with a big ego, I would say, and was thinking that I was going to be just fine. And by the end, I was defeated and exhausted. I hadn't eaten in 3 weeks, and I ended up in jail. And I had shared my experiences at a previous meeting as well. And Daryl had told me that I now have a diploma of the streets, which I appreciate, but I still don't think that I've earned. I felt like maybe I took some classes and I ended up failing out, which maybe would have been a more accurate description. Um, so I'm just really grateful for the rude awakening that I wasn't even aware that I needed. And I'm really hopeful that this conversation continues. And I'm really hopeful that as a community, we can work on expanding our services and just reducing the barriers that folks are experiencing on a daily basis.
Thank you, Ally.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Joey.
Can I give a short shout out to Allie, who immediately after reentry helped us with someone who was leaving jail to go to treatment and didn't have clothing. And Allie used the Wise Buys thrift store that's run by the YWCA to like immediately help and provide services for that person. And I think it was like these afterward conversations. The reentry simulation happens, but that's the reflection on what can you actually do that is so amazing to see, and then to see it immediately leap into practice. I mean, it's what you want to see happen, and it is, and it has been happening. So thanks, Allie.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joey. I'm a former incarcerated individual. I think one of the biggest things that I took away was just every, and a lot of other people I talked to, was just how that everybody's caring to try to work on this problem and not just like, let's just build a new jail, throw up the building, we're good. I think it was a really great experience. So much harder in real life. And I mean, obviously you can only do so much when it's a simulation. But another thing that really surprised me is when Daryl asked how many people could have gotten in trouble and ended up in jail or prison, and everybody raised their hands. And, or knew someone that's being affected by, drug use. But yeah, I think those were my biggest takeaways for sure. Yeah.
Joey, it was interesting when we had the debrief with we had 20 participants with lived experience at the simulation, and 10 of them joined us at Chuck It Up one day for a lunch and debrief. And Joey, something I just want to emphasize that I heard that day that you just said, is they said the simulation is just like a hint of the challenges. And that was really interesting to me, because sometimes I feel like when you're in those kind of simulations, it's like, is this really that, like, is it really like this? And everyone was like, it is so much harder.
Yeah, a million times. I mean, that's just a sliver of what it's like. It's just so confusing and difficult, and you feel like you're all getting the runaround, and you don't feel like there's anybody you can turn to that's on your side, is probably like the biggest thing. It feels like you're on one side and everybody's on the other, and you don't have anybody in your corner to help you do what they want you to do.
The other thing I heard loud and clear that day was the need for more peer navigators, and specifically like the peer part is so critical, is that they said we really need support, but we need support from people with lived experience. And so that felt really like strong. There's also a comment made that just shook me when we talked about what do they need most when they leave jail. And I was focused on like the IDs, and they're like, we need food. We need access to food. It's easier for us to access drugs than it is food. And that just has stayed with me. And I could feel my voice getting shaky. It's like, what kind of world is that possible? And these 10 individuals that, met again with us, I just want to emphasize, like, these people are all out of jail. They're on to the next chapter of their life, and they're willing to put time into making sure the system is better for the people that come after them. And I just think that's something that to keep in mind, like that is really compelling to me. They feel so strongly about a better system that they're willing to.
I think this is so important.
Thank you so much, Joey. You've been a tremendous champion. So we thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth. I saw Daryl has his hand up.
Yeah, sure. I didn't see that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm grateful for Joey. I really am. He just seems different. He talks different now. Glad to have an opportunity to help empower you, man, for what it looks like. I've been homeless and on drugs before. I now own 3 businesses and a franchise, you know, so I'm what getting it like, what getting it right looks like. But I would like to say to the participants on this call, most of you all, I'm not sure where you work or what your relationship is to the criminal legal system or any system in particular, but most of you all are barriers by proxy of the job. And it's not malicious and it's not intentional. I want to thank Heather and her team for helping to expose that. But what I'd like to offer you is to really look at your practices and your procedures and how just a little tweak in the way you look at the scope of it could change someone's life and impact someone's life greatly. So just wanted to give Joey a shout out and really ask you all. We call it an exercise in empathy, a walk in the shoes. This is tough. This is tough when it have, because what will happen is there are folks that looks like that are just like you all. You will immediately marginalize that person just because they've been to prison. And I think we have to take a realistic approach to that because, like Joey mentioned, my connection to everyone in the group is 2 things that I know about you all that you never told me. And one is that you all know somebody or connected to someone who's been impacted by the system that continues to go in and out or continues to use drugs, and you wonder why. The second thing that I know is true about all of you all is that at one time or another, you have done something or been in a situation where you could have got in trouble had the circumstances been different. So you're in no position to marginalize or judge. We got to be in a position of help. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Daryl. And Maya, do you have something to offer? It looked like you had unclicked a minute ago.
No, I mean, I could talk more and more about this forever because but I am excited that I feel like we have to keep this momentum going and I'm not exactly sure how we will do that. I don't know if that means like doing another reentry simulation or what, but it has to have next steps and follow through. And I'm really grateful that ChuckNet Health Foundation has allowed the flexibility to give some of that follow up, like the debrief with the folks who participated. And I understand there's an additional debrief discussion going to happen at the prosecuting attorney's office, which I think is fantastic. And I just really am grateful that the work is being continued. Thank you.
Great. Yes, Rosa, this is a great time for questions.
It's more like a statement. So
Okay.
let me lower my hand. So I'm a felon myself, but the difference is mine wasn't drugs or alcohol. It was a one-time offense that turned into a felony, and it's going to follow me for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. So I guess I understand, I guess, from what Daryl was talking about is how easy it is to fall back into it, because when I got out, no one would rent to me, no one would hire me. And then you're like, what do you do? And I was never in the system before. I haven't been in since then. You know, I'm a scientist. I went to school. I went to University of Connecticut, you know, like, and now this is my way of trying to give back and help. But I think from a different perspective, mine wasn't drugs or alcohol. It was a one-time offense. And I totally can understand not receiving the help or guidance. And then I could have went down some crazy road because everyone was turning their back. Like, oh, you're a felon. We don't want your kind here. We don't want you to work here. And I would interview for jobs after jobs, and they were just curious on what it was I did. Because when they do the background check, it just says I have this felony. It doesn't say what, it doesn't say specifics. And then I got to the point, I'm like, oh, they're just interviewing me because they're just curious. They're never going to hire me. But I lucked out, and I found I was bartending under the table. I won't say the name of the company. But one of my regulars was a professor from Western, and he was like, look, if you're always gonna, no one's gonna hire you in these blue collar jobs. Depending on, he's like, I don't want to know what your issue was, but go get a degree. And I mean, I've worked at the Department of Interior. You know, like I've been in DC. I go to DC a lot. I work with NOAA. I use all these acronyms and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, you haven't been in trouble in over a decade. Welcome. But I know for a fact, you guys, if I were to go apply right now to any blue collar job, Ross, Dress for Less, McDonald's, Burger King, whatever, they will not hire me to this day. So let's keep that in mind too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. That's really interesting. Thank you. I'm curious if there's any other comments or questions. I know we have a short amount of time. You have a busy agenda, but want to make sure we have any questions or thoughts.
Elizabeth, I think we have plenty of time for this, and I want to make
good.
sure that everybody gets a chance to ask questions, or I would really like to just remind everyone that project number 11 of the implementation plan is about bolstering reentry. And this body and our subcommittees have a great opportunity in the coming years to focus on doing reentry right. And I really saw this as just an incredible opportunity for us to be able to have just a sliver of experience of what it is like to go through the difficulty and the bureaucratic grind and the defeating all the various defeating elements of reentry process. And I really want to say thank you to the team who put this together. It was frustrating, upsetting, just as it should be. And experiential education is just so critical, and we so rarely in this work get it. So thank you so much for putting this on, and I'm looking forward to any other conversation. We can go another 15 minutes or more if there's good content here, and then we'll move on to the rest of our agenda.
Something that was one of the takeaways I captured at one of the tables was, in your regards to your experiential education, one of the tables like, well, that's great that we have all the system folks in here in this room, but they want to have one out at the Linden Fairgrounds for everyday community members to like really bolster the community engagement in this and to really fully understand whether it's the reentry, but just like this. It was really interesting. I was like, yeah, you're right, actually. I'm not sure if it would be as well attended as the fair, but there's something beautiful about inviting people into a bigger story and to, that grow that empathy. Yeah.
Elizabeth, I think I saw Joey raise your hand. Did you
I didn't
want to
see.
say?
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, I was just gonna throw in something about what the last lady had said. I think it would be huge if we could get like a clean slate law passed in Washington to help with, expunging as opposed to vacating and sealing criminal record after a certain amount of time, 4 or 5 years or something. I think that would be huge, like California's doing or did. That's it.
Great insight. And I wanted to just take a minute, Elizabeth, if it's okay, to really thank Rosa for sharing what you shared this morning. I'm so glad you're a part of the task force, and I hope you continue to share those kinds of stories, because this table is full of really, really busy community members that like making a difference. It's full of policymakers, it's full of law enforcement, it's full of people that the whole point of this task force, when it was conceptualized almost a decade ago, was how can we build a space to have consequential cross-sector collaboration conversations. That was a lot of C words. That was not even on purpose. And so what's the conversation we can have all together that we can't have in other rooms, where each of us has a part to play in making a difference? And one of my favorite moments at the simulation, everything Daryl shared in between and I don't know if maybe we could just share too, like, what would an example be? It would be like, you got to go stand in this ID line, but what would the barrier be? And or there were some stories of, you had to go to DSHS across town and take the bus, but when you got there, there was a sign on the door that said 30-minute lunch, and then you were going to miss your bus back to meeting your probation officer. And so either you didn't get your food stamps that day or you missed your UA check-in, and all of the heavy trade-offs that you're making with every decision when you are facing these barriers. And one of my favorite moments was when Deputy Caleb Erickson was in the jail at the simulation, and some of the insights he shared about, he's been working with this population for years and years and years. And he had some really beautiful insights about, wow, I didn't realize how hard this is. And he would rather sit in jail than have to figure out how to get through all of the lines and the systems. And so maybe it'd be nice to share, like, what would an example have been in that simulation? And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on, so this is the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. I love your idea, Joey, about, is there a clean slate law that we could look into supporting, whether through a lobbying agenda? And I'm really grateful, Peter, you connected this to the Project 11. How do we do reentry better as a community? So thinking about actions and rules that we could change, what advice would you give this task force as we move forward in our work? And I see Deborah and Rosa have raised your hands too. You're muted, Deborah. I think you're still muted. Oh, there you go. I see you.
It's my understanding that out of the 3 classes of felonies, you have Class A felonies, the most serious, then you have Class B, then you have Class C. So it's my understanding that after 5 or 10 years, you can get, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, you can get vacated a Class B or Class C felony. And I've known people that have had that done. So wanted to know if you could clarify, Rosa or Daryl or someone.
I'll talk. I'll answer that and then I'll say my comment. So it just depends on the crime. Anyone could look me up. So I have a Class B felony assault. So I'll just say it out loud because you could just Google what happened. I got in a fight one time, and like I said, I didn't have no priors. I was just in my young 20s, living it up, and then my whole life changed. So it just depends on the crime. Depends on if that's going to happen or not. And then my comment is I wasn't there at the simulations, but I know I am successful in coming out is because I had a great support system. And I know not everyone does, but I will tell you, even with a great support system, it was extremely difficult to stay on track. It was extremely difficult. Like what you were saying is like, you have to go get food stamps or get ID, but you have a UA. Like that really is a thing. It really is a thing because I never been on food stamps, and I'm not against it. My mom was a single mom of 3 when we were growing up, and we've had them. But like I said, no one was hiring me. So I had to go to DSHS, right? So, but that was with a great support system. And it started out with, I had a public defender who's no longer in Whatcom County, who believed, he's like, you don't have a past, whatever. He really fought for me, right? Still got a conviction, did my time, was on parole when I got out. And like I said, even with a great support system, and yes, I wasn't able to drive, but it was just hard. It was really hard. So I guess I've been thinking about like, where do you go from someone, say like myself, who was a one-time offender, no priors, who it still follows to this day, and then how do we help people like that, like myself, to be successful and to return back to the community and be helpful, but then also, how do we help the people that's probably been in 3 or 4 times, not complete loss, But then how do we help with the people that are just like, I'm going to say it this way, there's no hope. Because we got from all extremes. And I see it. It's there. I was locked up with all of them. So anywhere from me to people are just constantly in and out, in and out. And yes, they need maybe the support and stuff, and they're not getting it. But then also, I think it's a self, like, I'm never going to like get out of this. So who cares? And a lot of people think that way too. So I think there's how do we find that balance when it's hard? There's no middle, you know what I mean, to find that balance. So I'll just ramble. So I'll just stop right there. Thanks.
Thank you, Rosa. And Daryl.
Well, I'm kind of a solution-based guy, and I think that I want to offer something to this group that I think is paramount. Rosa just talked about the people with no hope. When I look at the people that are in prison, right, and those that have jobs like the correctional industry jobs, those people are up early, their uniforms are pressed, they're getting their lunches together, they're prepared to do the right thing, right? And I don't know nobody that's getting ready to get out of prison that's sitting there shaking spread saying, yeah, I'm gonna go out here and screw up, right? Um, and Rosa also spoke about how do you change that mindset and empower those individuals from the onset. And I'm of the opinion that after that experience in incarceration, it's like coming from a foreign land. There's a lot of social adaptation that takes place, but also families are the greatest barrier, because if you're trying to change and your family doesn't know you as this person trying to change, there becomes a conflict and a dynamic, and that's usually the first thing that runs folks back out to the streets. So what I've done, we kind of got an acronym too that I'm getting ready to present to our commissioners, and I'm going to share it with you guys because it's something that can kind of help everybody. We're going to be called the Washington Reentry Council of Kitsap, and it's an acronym. It spells REC, recidivism. And for me, the description that I have for our community is we're going to provide employment opportunities and a tiny home on day one, right? A lot of times folks want to get out and they want to give you all these classes and all this anger management and all of this monitoring, which is fine, but folks need something to do. Folks need something to occupy their minds, occupy their times. They need to feel productive. They need to feel like they're contributing. And I myself, I was like Rosa. Nobody would hire me. I got a job washing dishes the first day, but I also got a lawnmower to cut grass on the side, and I hated lawn care growing up. And by the time I got out of barber school, I had enough business that I had to start a landscape business. And Washington is big on that. I told my donor about this plan, and they gave me $100,000. You can probably build on a half acre to an acre. You could build 10 to 20 tiny homes with a double wide. Get a couple of businesses involved, and get these people to work in immediately. We're trying to create a mechanism with DOC where we vet these folks and we prepare them 60 to 90 days prior to being released. We know they're coming back to our counties, but we're not ready to receive them. We're ready to give them what we think will work for them. And they need to keep themselves busy. They need to figure out how to get past the psychological aspect. The trauma-informed part is totally missing. And we need to focus on that, because getting incarcerated is one of the greatest ACEs that you can experience next to abuse. So if you guys could figure out how to build a small community, which doesn't take a lot of actually the vouchers that DOC gives for housing would actually pay the first 3 months of it. And by that time, you'll have a community of people working. You'll have an ecosystem. That way a person has a door of his own. He's not in a house with 5 or 6 people, which is just an extension of prison. He has a little freedom to go and come. He still has that camaraderie, and they're successfully contributing to society. And I think that could be a huge springboard if you get them immediately before they're contaminated by the street. This is a capitalistic society, and that's not going to change. People got to figure out how to make a dollar and what to do with it when you get to it. So we're offering those opportunities, including our financial program called Banking Beyond Bars, because we want to dig a little deeper other than anger management. You know, when we talk about people and their trauma, I heard this at a training last week. It's not about what happened to a person when he gets incarcerated. It's about how they process what happened to them. And everybody processes it differently. So my advice to this group would try to figure out how to create meaningful employment opportunities that don't require a lot of security clearance, if you will. You know, I created a landscaping business with $100, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world. You know, we grossed over 6 figures for the last 8 years, and Wacom has a lot of beautiful scenery around there, greenery around there. The rain makes stuff grow. That's a low hanging fruit, if you will, and just figure out a space for them folks and build a team that way. I think that would be great for Wacom.
All right, thank you so much, Daryl. I really appreciate what you're saying and being solution oriented. And we know that work is a critical component to people having meaningful lives, and that's something that we could do much better on here with our reentry programs and opportunities. And Elizabeth, I wonder if you want to close us out so we can move on to our other agenda items.
Thank you. And thank you, Daryl and Joey and Rosa. It's such an honor to get to learn and work alongside really great people in this work. We are excited about our next steps. As Maya mentioned, we're going to be having a lunch with the prosecuting attorney's office with about 10 folks with lived experience. So just to continue those conversations, we think it's all about relationship building and growing better understanding of each other's experiences. So we're really excited about that. And then we're also looking, All Hands Whatcom is exploring the idea with the health department about having a civic engagement pilot, about having about 10 people really like enjoy and to have a 18-month pilot project where we start to really build advocacy skills and really support them to become even stronger leaders in the community. So I think there's lots of opportunities that we keep building and growing on this, and we invite you into whatever body of the work you want to be part of. We so appreciate what you're already doing and are grateful to contribute whatever we can to what you're making happen in our community. So thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you to, oh, yes, go ahead, Heather.
I want to also say thank you, Daryl, Elizabeth, Rosa, Jason, I think, or Joey, sorry. What you have shared here today will make a difference. I think you should know, if you don't already, that Whatcom County has a great opportunity with this this new sales tax revenue. And we all at this table really want to get it right so that if people end up in the system, that they get a better chance and opportunity because of it, not the opposite. And so your words are consequential here, and I want you to know that we're hearing them and continue to share them with us, because it will make a difference in the policy decisions and the funding decisions moving forward and how programs and buildings get shaped. So thank you for spending the time. And I would love to, maybe at a different meeting, after some reflections get to sink in for some of the other task force members that didn't share but were really good listeners today, I'd love to hear at the next meeting what kernels of wisdom you're hearing and how you want to incorporate it into our work moving forward too. So think about that over the holidays. So thank you.
Thank you. Lots of appreciation to each of you.
And depending on how the rest of the agenda goes, we may have some time for more questions from IPRTF members. But I would like to take care of some business. Let's return to item number 3. And Jill, is there anything that you would like to say about the year-end report before we have a vote?
I'm not a creator of the report this year. I would ask Holly and Marty.
Holly and Marty, is there anything that you'd like to say about the year-end report?
Yeah, Marty, is there anything you'd like to mention? I think we just need a vote to approve, a motion and a vote to approve. Yeah, so Marty, anything you want to say?
No, I hope y'all had a chance to look it over and should be ready to roll.
Great. Okay. Well, it's been in your packet. We've had numbers of opportunities to read it and to make changes. So with that, could I get a motion to approve the year-end 2024 year-end report?
So moved.
And I'll second.
Great. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All in favor, say aye, raise your hands on screen or otherwise. And now any opposed or abstentions? All right, seeing none, we've approved the year-end report. Thank you so much. All right, next we will return to number 5. And Holly?
Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Joe,
yes.
Sorry,
Yes,
can we
Joe.
also do the committee calendar, the IPRTF and committee calendar for 20?
Oh, yes, of course. Let's do. Is there anything you'd like to say on that?
Nothing. It's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
All right. So would anybody like to make a motion to approve? I see Birdie has made a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Scott has seconded. Any discussion? All right, those who would like to approve, vote aye. Raise your hand. All right. Anyone who votes no or would like to abstain, raise your hand. And that passes. Melora, your hand's still up, but I'm going to assume that that was not intentional. Very good. Okay, we have passed our IPRTF committee calendar, and now we can move to item number 5, our 18-month IPRTF work plan. Holly and Marty.
Great. Thank you, Peter. So here we are doing more planning, our favorite topic. And Marty and I have been, as you know, supporting the co-chairs and all of you in going through this process of really setting some priorities and focusing our work. So I won't recount all those steps, but you were all there. We've been steadily moving along. And one of our things was to clarify our role and to come up with some priorities for the year. So we're going to talk about that process. So this first step, which I think bears repeating every time, is just to remind everyone that the task force is responsible for catalyzing action, but they are not the actors. And these are the things that the IPRTF is charged with. So identifying needs, researching and promoting best practices, ensuring community engagement, accountability, and transparency. And this is especially important during this time after we have approved the tax and set the justice project implementation plan into motion, this community engagement, accountability, and transparency. And as always, generating policy recommendations and making those recommendations to the council and executives. So all of our work together, both as the IPRTF and then as the subcommittees, is moving us towards being able to do what we're set up to do. So you may recall the top 3 goals from the prioritization exercise. And we always start this by saying, of course, there's all the goals, and of course we want to make progress on all of them. But to the degree that we can focalize our efforts, there's an efficiency here and also a real opportunity to make a bigger difference, I think, when we focus. So the three that rose to the top are adapting best practices for designing and operating the new jail and behavioral care center, creating a data dashboard, and strengthening and evaluating diversion programs. So those are the three that we're all working towards right now. As you know, what can we collectively and as each subcommittee do to help move these three forward in addition to our other work? Next slide. All righty. So what I'm going to talk about, there's just 2 more slides here, maybe 3, but like, how are we going to actually make this happen? And what's the timeline for making this happen so that we're not actually endlessly in a planning cycle, but that we're moving then in towards the action? So for this, we started really in this last November, we're in December. So this month, January, possibly February, the committees want to identify the ways they can contribute to these top 3 goals. The IPRTF co-chairs are there. Heather and Peter are there to support you, supporting the committee chairs to draft their 18-month action plans and help work with their subcommittees to just make sure you're all in unity. And then ideally in February or March of this coming year, the co-chairs would assemble all those plans into a full IPRTF action plan. And then we'd have that, presented to the whole. So that's the basic timeline. And again, to reiterate that Heather and Peter are there to support you all. So this is an example of what a committee or subcommittee, really, the subcommittee action plan for 2025. This is the one that the JPOP is going to be looking at this coming Thursday. So you can use this as a model if you like, or you can come up with your own. But after Marty and I tried a couple of different approaches and kind of tested them out with our co-chairs, this seemed like it was dialing it in at a way that was more accessible, I think, and made more sense for our committee. So we've put what the responsibilities of the JPOP are at the top. And then we just made it as a calendar with the focus topics for the meetings in the left-hand column. And then the related action items on the right-hand side. So this is, of course, it goes through longer than this. Ours went, even though we're coming up with a full 18-month action plan, we felt like for our committee's work, it would be easier to just go through the end of the year. So through 2025, which is easier to think that through. And we know things are going to change, right? I mean, they always do. Plans they're a way to get you started and get you thinking, and then life happens. So yeah, so this is an example we wanted to offer to the rest of you. And if you want to come to the JPOP meeting, of course, you're always welcome. I know some of you are already on it and can give your feedback, and we'll see how that works. But that's where we are so far. And I really want to thank Peter and Heather, especially for their leadership in just supporting the task force and its subcommittees and really moving forward in a really concentrated and effective way. So any questions from anybody at this point? Okay, well, great. That's all we have to share, and good luck. And yeah, it's fun stuff. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just want to encourage our chairs and co-chairs of our subcommittees to please focus on this. Reach out to Heather and to me. Have us to your meetings. Have us to coffee. Let's talk this through, and we can do everything we can to help move this forward. All right, thank you for that, Ollie and Marty. Let's see. The next item is one that I brought forward. It is the proposal for the new work group to advance the use of behavioral care center model in Whatcom County. And I'm going to actually withdraw this for today's meeting. I appreciate if you spent time to read it. I'm withdrawing it because I believe I have an upcoming meeting with Hannah Fisk from the Health Department on this subject. And then also Heather has brought forward some, I think, thoughtful models that would could dovetail very well with what we're planning with our behavioral care center. And I'd just like to take a little extra time to think through this, and then I will remake my proposal. So if anybody has any questions for me or that process, I'd be happy to hear them. Okay, don't see any. Well, item number 7 is Supreme Court decision on public defender workload. I think that would have popped up on my radar if they had made the decision. Maya, any word?
Yeah, they're meeting again on their next en banc meeting is February 26th, where they intend to further discussion. We remain optimistic that that discussion will result in an actual decision. So delay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. It's time for committee updates. I don't think that anyone from behavioral health is on the call. Am I missing anyone who? Oh,
Chair,
Arlene?
I see Stephen in the attendees list too, and I'd be
I did
grateful
not.
to promote him to panelist and allow any updates from him on Dan's behalf, if you're okay with that.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Please do. I'm sorry, Stephen, I didn't look at the attendees list. Are you able to give us a report?
I wasn't prepared with a report. It was a joint meeting with the Legal and Justice Systems Subcommittee as well. There was a mixed agenda of topics. We talked about, in fact, some contacts we've made with a reentry program from Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles and an affiliate program in Skagit County. We're trying to learn more about that program because it has a quite an impressive track record of success. It's a very comprehensive approach and would require some effort to translate it into Whatcom County. But another way to look at the critical focus on reentry that was fleshed out in an impressive way this morning as well. I guess Raylene is off the call now. Is that right?
Raylene, are you here? No, I see her.
I'm here, but I'm in a car. I'm not driving, but I think if Stephen can continue, it would probably be better with the background noise that I have.
Thanks, Raylene. I'm not recalling the entirety of our agenda. It was quite a long agenda. Anybody else who was there, and I see Arlene with her hand up. So Arlene, if you could contribute something, you'd be bailing me out in a very helpful way.
Arlene, you're muted.
I could speak particularly about the Homeboy program because I was familiar with it when they brought it to us because I had lived in Los Angeles when it started 36 years ago. And it performed well and is still going. So it's a jobs program, a job training program, all aspects of getting ready for work. And it's quite thorough and has worked quite well. And I wanted to say that the program that we had today earlier was a transformational program. And because I'm a history buff and I read history, I understand that the systems that we establish are unchanging in certain ways and changing in others. So we have had a history of slavery, and it still exists. And we are being activated specifically to begin to make systematic changes if we can. And we will find ways to do that in the future. That's why Homeboy program is so important to talk about.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. And Stephen, there was another item on the agenda from that meeting that I thought was very interesting, and that was Caleb Erickson's report about a program, pilot program that they had done. Is that something you might speak to?
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Peter. Caleb has initiated on his own a small pilot project, what he's calling a behavioral health pilot project, where he has created some meeting space. He's made some, I'll say, renovations of that space in terms of a calming paint color, for instance. So he's trying to carve out a small but impactful environment within the jail to begin some behavioral health services there. And I think it's quite new, but he was letting us know about those. He also reported on the rather challenging but potentially rewarding reentry grant. I think it's a Bureau of Justice Administration grant that the county has received that they are working on. They have a series of 5 goals that they're required to meet, and they're working through those. One of the upcoming goals is developing a data capacity for measuring effectiveness and goal achievement. So there were within the jail milieu, there were a couple of promising endeavors underway that Caleb reported on.
And one thing I'd like to point out is the pilot program, behavioral health pilot program in the jail that Caleb moved forward is a direct result of St. Paul's commitment to sending a whole host of us to Franklin County, Ohio, Columbus, to see a very good, brand new jail there that in many ways we'll likely be using as a model. And we witnessed a morning program of this sort, and I believe that Caleb picked it up and ran with it when he got back here. And so my hat's off to St. Paul for that, supporting that excellent trip. That's bringing great ideas to Whatcom County. It's fantastic. Okay, let's go on to another, let's see, index. Shall we talk about index? Anybody want to report on that, Bertie?
Okay. Yes, the index committee met at the beginning of the month, and obviously the priority of the IPRTF that we are focused on is the creation of a dashboard. And Marty, you sent me this morning an excellent slide differentiating the work of JPOP from the index committee. And if you had a moment to share your screen and show that, I thought it was quite helpful because there is a lot of overlap, which is very important, and yet there are some differences. If you have that, okay, but hang on a second. There we go. I'll give you a minute to read this, but I think that you can see that there are some subtle differences. JPOP is particularly charged with evaluating our implementation plan and how well it is succeeding along the way with all its parts, and ensuring public engagement and communication with that. And I think the index committee is a little more boots on the ground with developing an overall data collection and reporting system and making recommendations across all the agencies of Whatcom County to collect consistent data with consistent data definitions and be able to develop agreements where we share data that's needed in a way that can be reported out. So that's our overall purpose of the index committee. And at our meeting, we are doing what all the committees are doing, which is coming up with our major priorities. And so I'm going to freewheel a little bit. So if anyone else was at the meeting, feel free. I think there was consensus that we are going to need, we being Whatcom County, are going to need outside help to facilitate and advise us in the development of a meaningful dashboard for the public to reflect the justice system and its work. And in that spirit, then Peter Frazier gave us an excellent report from a conference call that several of us had with a group called Measures for Justice. And Peter, I know you've brought this up before, but if I could put you on the spot, or if not, I will try to summarize just a very short summary of what it is, because it generated, I think, a lot of interest in our subcommittee. So do you mind
sure.
a short viewpoint?
Sure. The short version is that Measures for Justice is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, apparently well-funded, that is trying its best to, or doing a great job actually, of standardizing criminal justice data across the entire country, county by county. They are working with a whole host of jurisdictions, and including in the state of Washington, Thurston County, which encompasses Olympia. They have great resources for a county such as ourselves, who are serious about wanting to have good, clean, usable, actionable criminal justice data in a form that we can use it to create a data dashboard as per our implementation plan project, and to make good policy decisions around that data. So it is our hope that we will be able to work with the Measures for Justice and move that data project of ours forward. They have a product called Commons, which is a dashboard that would come along with this work that we would do. So we would not have to reinvent the wheel here in Whatcom County. So we were also on the call with one of their data scientists who did just an excellent job of talking about how their work can dovetail with the sort of work we're talking about, where we look at diversions and assess those diversions and their impact. And Kayla, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I just have a few questions, Peter. Appreciate your work on this. I'm all for us getting us some standardized tools and reinventing the wheel. Can you, like that last piece you said, is this more about measuring sort of processing through our criminal justice system? Or is it more about the diversion program outcomes, or is it both of those things?
Really, it's a focus on the criminal justice data, yet let's see, I would have loved to have had you on that call so you could have heard their doctor, whose name I'm forgetting, a data scientist who works in the area of diversions and behavioral health. And it was maybe anybody else who was on the call could explain it better than me. But I believe that we have really good potential for getting the whole system that we're interested in, Kayla, through working with Measures for Justice and then doing our own work that I know is being planned and thought about in the health department. So love to sit down with you at any time to talk this through and work towards the system that we need. Heather, do you have something to add?
I would add that my understanding from the call, Kayla, is that it will help, that the Measures for Justice dashboard would help actually build the, like, extracting the data from the prosecutor's office, from the sheriff's office, to have a good, like, what's the current state of the system, and help us see trends and make meaning of, what are the different top charges and what is the recidivism rate. But what was also quite exciting is their process is, the first phase is a community engagement process where a group like the IPRTF or JPOP would be able to say, here's what success looks like to us. And then their data scientists help us decide what would the 3 measures or 5 measures be that would be measuring that success, depending on what the community says. So it's a little bit of both, I think, Kayla.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, I would say, like, I know there's a lot of conversation happening around sort of the Village Reach contract and what the health department is doing. And I'm sure you're all thinking about those intersections. From our office's standpoint, I think, I think there's a lot of interest. I think getting information together on budget and cost sooner rather than later would be a really great next step. There's some money carved out or planned, I guess I would say, based on the commitments in the implementation plan, but getting some of that sort of like, so we can see how the budget's aligned with what we've planned and carved out sooner rather than later, before we get too far down the path would be great. So if you or Peter or anyone can send me what they have, that would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, Kayla, thank you. And I think you're leading right into our kind of plans for the next meeting. This meeting was somewhat introductory, and I think it generated a lot of discussion and a lot of interest. And one of the things I heard you say a few months ago was the index committee could be helpful, or the entire IPRTF could be helpful by really giving you something concrete, that this is what we need, this is what we want, and this is how much it'll cost, and then you can, work with it. So we have heard that and are on that track. I think it's a little preliminary. I don't think you're going to get anything. But our next steps are to talk with Thurston County, talk with the state, which is also working with Justice Counts. And it turns out that Measures for Justice is the data collection arm of partner of Justice Counts. So this is not either or. I think it's all wrapped together. So we decided our next steps are to get down on the ground and gather more information, which I'm hopeful to have before our February meeting, and then keep plugging away. So I want you to know we heard you and we agree with you. It's just taking, we meet every other month. So that's where we're at. But good, thank you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that
that's
sounds
a pretty good sub.
And I would just add, when you're talking to folks, appreciate all the legwork you're doing here. Can you ask Thurston or the state if they have access to any grants to help pay for this? Can that be part of?
That's actually our first work plan, is to talk to the state and see how they're funding it, what it's costing, and the same with Thurston County. So we are very clear that we don't have a printing press in the basement, and we're going to have to find money someplace. So, but thank you. And we are also more than willing to engage you in any of the conversations. So if you would like, we can easily invite you and let you be aware, and you can choose to come if you're available or not come if you're not. But that would be fine.
Yeah, that sounds great, Bertie. And we're hiring another staff person in our office to backfill some of our vacancies, who's going to be here mid-January. So hopefully we'll have a little more capacity after that.
Well, I guess I can just send things to you and then you can delegate as you see fit, or you could give me a name if you wanted.
Yeah, just send it to me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertie. Appreciate your leadership on the IPRTF. Holly and Marty, do you want to report on J-pop?
Sure. I can get that started. And I think these are, I think what I have to say make nice segues with everything that has been said before. Those of you who are on our email list will have received the agenda for the upcoming meeting happening this Thursday. It will be the third meeting of the J-pop. By the way, if you aren't on our list to receive agendas and materials and you would like to be, just send me an email. We'll get you on the list. Anyway, at our upcoming meeting on Thursday, 2 o'clock, we are going to be working with, we're going to have Julia Gorette there from Village Reach, and we're going to have the very beginnings of our work on talking through what success looks like. And we'll be using the quarterly report, which actually it's kind of a summary of what happened over the first year of the implementation plan that Kayla put together a couple quarters of reports, and we made a graphic version that represents basically the first year of progress. And we'll be looking at that with the J-pop committee and just saying, okay, what screams out to you here? What do you want to know more about? What does success look like to you, and what might we start measuring? We also will go through that action plan that Holly showed a piece of, and talk about that. And then at our next meeting, we're going to have Caleb, that will be January 16th. We're going to have Caleb and also Hannah Sloan from Lifeline Connections talk a little bit about that pilot project at the work center that it's called Making Changes. And that's what Peter had referred to as just trying out some, well, this is what was discussed at the Behavioral Health and Legal and Justice joint meeting, that pilot. And we'll have more discussion about that and talk about doing this survey and focus groups with inmates about how the design of the new jail and behavioral care center can be very conducive to healing and preventing recidivism, etc. Holly, you want to add anything in there?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Marty, for that report.
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions, happy to take them.
Oh, sure. Any questions for Marty? Barry, are you prepared to say a few words about the steering committee meeting?
Yes, I am. Most of which we've already covered in our meeting today. We talked about the 2025 calendar. We talked about the year-end report. But we did go over our legislative priorities, in particular, the ones related to behavioral health. And there's a lot of information about this in the steering committee minutes. I looked to find out where the narrative was. It explains all the following categories that I'll let you know what they are. Number one was behavioral care center. Number two, a youth co-occurring treatment facility, regulatory framework and operating funds for the Crisis Relief Center, increased Medicaid reimbursement rates for providers, fund Medicaid eligibility waiver in the jail, and housing policy modernization for individuals with severe behavioral health conditions, strengthening 911 and 988 system coordination, and improving Involuntary Treatment Act, the ITA, legal framework. And like I said, there's a lot of narrative in the steering committee packet if you want to go back and look at that. But I want to focus on the last one, the ITA piece. One of our co-chairs, Heather Flaherty, has brought up a very good point in that we've been talking about secure withdrawal management for quite some time and how we could do that and what kind of a facility we might have for that. And, you know, she's pointing out that since we're at ground zero on our behavioral care center, we should be looking at options. What are the options for licensing and things that might help us go into that world? So Heather, do you want to expand a little bit on that, on your thinking?
I can briefly, and I think it's actually worth a deep dive at some point, whether at a joint committee meeting or even the IPRTF. The short version is that based on many interviews with law enforcement, people who have been involuntarily committed, the hospital staff, the designated crisis responders, the peer recovery support, Chuck Annette has been partnering with the King County Prosecutor's Office to put together a report on what do we need to change about the Involuntary Treatment Act. And in these interviews, we're learning a lot about the law specifically, but also there will be no surprises to this team here. We're learning about all of those needs outside of the law and that treatment specifically too. So we're hearing about the need for employment and supportive housing and prevention and taking care of kids and reducing trauma on the front end so that people don't end up in the system. And I think there's a growing recognition in our community of the evolving nature of the drugs on the streets that make it really hard sometimes for people to be in positions where if it's just an option to go to recovery, they may not be able to make that decision. And there is a law called Ricky's Law that allows people to be detained for their own safety. And so it requires, though, a secure withdrawal management facility. We don't have one in this community other than the hospital serves as that. And I understand Lummi Nation is going to build one as well. And so I proposed at the Finance Advisory Board last week that it at least gets explored if the behavioral care center could also serve as a place where involuntary treatment could be an option. And so from that front end, like Barry said, what is the licensing requirement for that? What's the staffing? What would need to be built so that it isn't just an optional, do you want to go to jail or behavioral health, but that it's a place where people in crisis could be put on a path to care and recovery, hopefully. I think there's controversy sometimes around ITA too, and so it's worth a real robust community conversation. And I see Maya's hands up. Anything you want to share right now?
Thanks. Just that it also involves building a whole new like court program around that, because anytime there's involuntary commitment, that person's entitled to an attorney, which means then we need to probably employ another lawyer, probably another defender, probably a prosecutor, court commissioner time, all the staff work that goes into that too. So just as long, I mean, that's just a consideration of expense that needs to go along with it, in addition to the treatment in the facility and everything. Thanks.
Thanks, Maya. Perfect job, Heather. I just wanted to get that concept in front of the group because now's the time to ask those questions as we're on the front end of this project. So Thanks again. That's all I have, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Barry. And I'd just like to refer back to item 6, the proposal for IPRTF work group to advance the use of the behavioral care center model in Whatcom County. That is very much this is what I'm referring to. We're going to want to put some thought, effort, and time in this on this in this work group that I'm proposing. So that would be part of it. And thank you, Maya and Heather, for speaking up there. Okay, with that, I believe that we have had all of our committee updates. Heather, did I see by text that you would like to bring something forward right now?
I'd like to try something different for other business. In the spirit of engagement at the task force and hearing from everybody, I don't want to feel like I'm just talking at you all the time. And the point of this body is that all of you are brilliant and smart, and there's opportunities to cross-pollinate thinking and how we operate in all of our worlds. So I have a couple of questions, and I am going to take chair prerogative and just call on every single person one at a time, because I'd love to get everybody's voices in the room at this last meeting of this crazy year together. So the questions I'd like to ask of you to each share are, what are you most looking forward to in our work ahead in 2025? Another way to think about that is, what do you hope we'll be able to say is different, or what do you hope you'll be able to say about our work together period next December when we're having this meeting? The other question, if that one feels too hard, is just, what are your insights from the conversations today? What are your takeaways that you're leaving this Zoom room with? I'll start to give you guys just a minute to think about it. One of my takeaways is when Daryl was talking about when people leave, they're working on a program that when people leave jail or prison, that they get a tiny home and a job. And I think there's some dovetailing with that Homeboy Industries program that we're talking about, thinking about, is that, I bet there's a high return on that investment when we can reduce the return to incarceration. So I want to think more about that. I'm going to take prerogative and just go in the order on my screen. And Peter, I'm going to let you go last. Okay. Marty, you're next. Insights, or what do you want to look forward to for next year?
I am really focused right now on this, like the great role this group plays in bringing innovative and progressive ideas forward for consideration, and kind of the role the group can play in pushing those ideas forward, in that we are not I'm saying you all are not the people who actually do the work of the projects, but how can you move things forward by your advocacy, by being present in meetings, and what are the other ways? So that's just what's on my mind. Thanks.
Thanks, Marty. Arlene.
Well, I don't know where to start. I think that they were telling us today that we're part of important change, and that we have to go the extra effort in our persistence and asking for change over and over and over again, so that we end up getting it. And I can say that readily because I have seen the change, and it has come from you talking to each other and banding together for your goals. And it's been thrilling to see and to be part of.
Thank you, Arlene. Mayor Cortice.
So one of the goals that we have for the year is getting data, and I'm a data guy. So I'm hoping by this time next year, we do have data that can guide us in our decisions so we can make quantitative movements in the right direction. So I'll keep it simple, more data.
Thank you. Dr. Safford. You're muted. Unmute.
Okay. I think Mayor Cortes is singing my song. I would hope by the end of the year, we would have a firm recommendation long before the end of the year, a firm recommendation to exec in Whatcom County on how we recommend getting a data system built and all, and that it's underway, if not complete by it, but really happening. That's number one. And number two, I'm really very passionate about the issues around reentry. And so I hope by the end of the year, we have good recommendations in many different areas and some pilot projects, the way Caleb is doing in the work center right now, but we have more of those underway and some good community involvement around that.
Thank you. Kayla.
I am really excited about the behavioral care center stuff. And I feel like to get there, we need to get through some of these really big decisions on the jail in terms of size and budget. So I'm like weirdly excited about those decisions because then we can move on to the fun and interesting stuff from a policy perspective. So just like, I'm super excited over the next 3 to 6 months to just get to some of those big elephants in the room on the jail so we can move past them.
Thank you. Maya.
Hi, budgets are bumming me out, state and local budgets, but the creativity and dedication I see in places like this really inspire me and give me the hope that I need. I would like to see every person leaving the jail have meaningful reentry support with peer, caseworker, but also have the available services to be guided to. So thank you. This is my like New Year's Eve wish. I don't know. Now I'm not sure what I touched what we were doing. But.
First draft anyway. Yeah. Holly.
Yeah, great. It was an awesome meeting. I want to just say I was so inspired by the whole reentry simulation was phenomenal to me. And I thought your words at the end of that, Heather, were just like, we want people to exit this whole system better. I was like, yes, let's just say that 1,000 times. And on a personal note, because I work also a lot with food banks, frankly, I was just so struck by the issue about hunger, and that's something that I'm gonna go to one of the food banks I work with, and like let's start with that right now. Like I like the low-hanging fruit, and I feel like that's something we could get started on this month, frankly. So
Thank you, Holly. Mr. Andrew Mitchell.
Hey there. Well, I'm over at the municipal court, and we're all really excited to get this community court program up and running on January 7th. So just another diversion program to get connected with all the services, and all this exposure with you guys has been great. So we're just really excited to have another venue and opportunity to provide, a diversion program. So
That's amazing. I'd love to hear more about that at a future IPRTF meeting.
yeah.
Thank you. Jason.
Hey, good morning. So I'll talk a little bit about what I'm excited about because there's a lot. My position with the city is obviously still brand new. Actually 2 months today since the day I started, and I've already learned so much and look forward to just continuing to be out in the community to learn about the resources and programs available, to take on new projects and create new opportunities specifically for housing, for supported housing, for low income housing, for anything we can really do to address the homelessness crisis.
Oh, you're muted. You got muted in the middle of your sentence.
I
Anything
grazed
to
my
address?
trackpad and it hit my audio button.
Got it.
I mean, it's been kind of unfortunate that the first couple of projects I've had to take on since I've been here have been related to encampment stuff, which isn't, not fun to thing to kind of just launch into my new role. So I'm really excited to start looking into some alternative housing opportunities, things we can do, in a year. Like, what can we do to get maybe some tiny home villages up and running? I know that's already something that they're working on with the city. And what can we do in even shorter term? What can we do in 6 months? What can we do to really create some other options for people to stay, if we're going to have to go in and clean up some of the camps out there, which it's inevitable that it's happening, and right now we just don't have a lot of alternatives. And so I would really like to be a part of that solution. I'm going to be part of that, and so I'm excited for that opportunity, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to displace anybody with nowhere to go. I'm here to give them somewhere to go, and so I look
That's
forward to really
awesome.
digging in and doing that.
Thanks for being a part of this task force.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to some of our off-screen friends, if you're able to unmute. Rosa, I was so grateful for your contributions today and sharing. Is there anything you'd like to share right now about insights from the conversation today, or what you're most looking forward to for our work together next year?
I think what I would like to see, or hopefully it could happen, or if I could be a part of, if it is an option, is this conversation brought me back to a few years ago. So I work at a college, and I'm a researcher. So I work with college students and science and stuff. So I get to yell at students about pipetting correctly and chemicals and all this stuff. Anyway, so we had a program. I don't remember the name of the program. They came through, and because I work at a tribal college, they're like, hey, we would like to partner with tribal colleges with education programs for, prisons, right, with the native population. I was like, oh my gosh, that's me, right? I've been in the system. I'm out of the system, like I stated earlier, earned a few degrees, been all over the United States working and stuff. But then it was shut down because I am a felon. So I don't know if anyone's have talked about stuff like that, but that's what I would like to see, and if I could definitely be a part of it, and help if the table isn't too full, if the plate isn't too full already. That's just something to I've been thinking about since I've been on this task force. It's like, well, first, how do I bring it up? When do I bring it up? And because I came in, right, new this earlier this year and the plates are overrun. So I'm like, do I add a little bit more to it, or do I just hold off? So I feel like this is a great time to bring that up. But yeah, I would love to see programs like that, to where one-time offenders like myself, who's been in the system, who's still in the system, who's not completely free still, but living the free life. How do we get back in there from a different perspective, saying, hey, there is hope, you can do this, and I speak the language. So that's it.
Grateful you're here, and so
Thank you.
grateful you shared, and there will be room on the plate for all of that. It is some of the most important work that we can do, and you in leadership and partnership on that work will be invaluable. So thank you. Deborah Hawley, are you willing to come on and share any insights from today, or hope for next year? You're muted, my friend. Unmute, unmute, unmute.
I am so sorry. Obviously, I am tired today. So I haven't had a lot of time to reflect on this, and I feel like I need to, but I will give my initial thoughts. So from a systems perspective, I'm sure most of you know that it's really important to have everybody at the table that's involved in that system. So, Daryl and Rosa and the others that have participated, and myself to participate more as somebody that has a loved one that has been incarcerated for over 20 years off and on in jails around the state, not just Whatcom County, and is currently, I'll be honest, doing his 4th prison sentence in Washington State. So I have a lot to offer. And I'm just really glad to see this interface with these folks coming in and joining this conversation so that we can have the whole system at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Your contributions in the past have also been invaluable, and it's always important to have that gut check of, is this policy actually going to work? And you and Rosa and the lived experience can actually give us that gut check. So thank you for that. I'm going to call on Melora and Allie and Elizabeth, and then I'm going to go to Barry, Satpal, and Peter. But Rosa, I see you raised your hand. Is there something you want to say really briefly?
Really quick. So I'm going to ask Jill. I'm going to send something to Jill, and hopefully she'll send it to all you guys. And it's a little quick 8-minute video that was a part of, and what we're talking about today is mainly that video. So yeah, so I'll send the link to Jill, and hopefully she can send it out. That's all.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thanks. Melora.
Good morning. Thank you for such a great meeting. It's been really inspiring. I think for me, thinking about the next year, really wanting to build on the momentum from the last few years and this commitment from our community to try to do things differently and think outside of the box, and to really push on those places where I think maybe historically we have said, no, we can't do that. And so just really wanting to continue to build on that. I echo so many of the things that people have said. Maya, I hear you. The budget stuff is so challenging right now. And so just, really wanting to support and be a part of leadership that is willing to make investments in things that are not always the easiest to do. I specifically will be focusing on the workforce issues, continuing to focus on the workforce issues of our social service providers in 2025. We meet with them regularly. We do surveys with them. We did a listening session recently with the North Sound BHASO. And what we're hearing is that those agencies are struggling. There's issues with pay, there's issues with just support for the ongoing work and the trauma and vicarious trauma that comes with it. And so really trying to bolster that. If we build new things and we don't have staff to work them, and we don't have the right type of staff to work them, we aren't going to be able to pull this off. So really investing in what we already have. I think the new is exciting, and we also need to continue to invest in what we've already committed to. I also, just going back to the idea of momentum, so many good things that have been talked about for years are coming to fruition right now. I'm standing in my new office, which is above the waste station, and I've already seen at least 15 people go into the hygiene center this morning for showers and laundry services. And it's so exciting after, I think, 5 years of that project trying to get off the ground. It's open. And so just reminding ourselves that these things take time and they take significant commitment and investment.
Thank you, Melora. Allie, anything you want to share?
Yeah, this is my first time attending one of these meetings, and so it's been really amazing just to listen to everybody's input and contributions. And one of my biggest takeaways this year so far has been the reentry simulation and just how moving that experience was. And one of my major takeaways was how undeniable the similarities are between folks leaving the justice system and homelessness. And so I would really love to see in 2025 how those things could interact, and the changes that we're making in the community could support both of those populations. I've only been at my role at the Y for maybe a year and a half, and I'm really trying to be more diligent, to be more involved in the community and be considered a thought partner and a community part of the solution. So I'm really excited about just more ways to get involved.
Sally, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, anything you want to share with us?
First, echoing what everyone said, from food to housing and everything. And the one thing I kept thinking about too was to add is that like everyone that leaves jail feels like someone's on their side, and there's some sort of somebody that is there to care for them, and they feel it. And like the most lonely thing in the world is I think the most terrible thing in the world is to feel alone. And so I just think about everyone having somebody that they feel is on their side.
Elizabeth. Executive Sadhu, thank you so much for being here
Thanks.
today. I'd love to hear if you have any insights or hopes for next year.
Thank you. I have several, but I think the first thing is the data silos. It's not that we don't have data. We have data. We have different collection methods, and they don't index to each other. So I think just breaking the data silos, and I think we have had that discussion in the index committee before also. That's my wish, that by end of this year, coming year, that we have a consistent data which can talk to each other from health department, sheriff's office, prosecutor's office, and community and nonprofits and all this, so that we have that. So that's my really hope and wish, that we are able to achieve that. On the side of housing and like your wish to have a tiny house for everybody coming in, are we starting to think that tiny house is a permanent housing? I think that when we started, I was very gung-ho when I was on the council. I think I spent the very first Swift Haven, how it came into being. I spent a lot of time and hours with Mr. Peterson and a few others. But it was always thought that it's the transitional housing, and people will be there for 2, 3, 4 months, and then they will go. We have no place to go. We should admit that. I think that we should be honest about it, that there is no transition housing. There is no place to go to from there. The people who are in these, there were very few people. There are some good examples, and they lifted themselves out. But as a system, we have not, the continuum is broken, right? The second thing is that we as a society, and this is not only Whatcom County overall, have not able to raise this to national level. We think we did. We always, when this crisis comes in, we always look inwards. What can city do? What can county do? What can community do? We stop there. We have very limited resources, sorry to say, but we cannot tax our way through it. We can't. We already know that very small increase in tax and how difficult it has become. We are actually taxing the poor people to help the other poor people. I mean, that's the reality of it. Because that's not because our intent is that. That is because our tax system is regressive. Whenever we tax higher, much higher percentage of the income of the bottom 30, 40% of the people. And we keep putting more weight on them, right? So that's not a possible solution for us to say, well, let's get some more money locally and do that. But how come that this is not a national issue? How come this is not like food bank? In the United States of America, I grew up in India. I can understand what food banks or poor people live or their hunger needs are. And here, I don't think that beyond a few community organizations, even community is not involved. We have 150 churches in Whatcom County. If everybody takes 5 people, we will have a big dent in the problem. So it means that we as a community And we are the same people who go to those churches. We are the same people who go to other organizations. It's not that there's somebody else. It's among us, all of us. But we are not engaged. We are engaging these 250 people in Whatcom County. It's my big estimate, who are really know what this issue is and what the solutions we need to find and what thought partners we want to be and what solutions we want. 250 people out of 250,000 people who are looking about it, talking about it daily, or they go to bed thinking about it. What can we do? So I think my wish is that we can involve much larger segments of our community into these issues to find solutions. Governments are not the solution. I can tell you that. Let's not kid ourselves that let's tell the government and they can solve it. The federal government can. They got enough money and that to make it. Sorry, I will stop here. I think you guys get the gist of it, but I really appreciate all the work IPRTF we have done over last several years, and especially last 1 year. And now we are starting on the main jail project and behavioral health, that discussions we have. I think those are all will be more significant in 2025 to shape what kind of institution we're going to get. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Executive Sadhu. I think those are really powerful insights. I think it'd be worth a policy conversation or a community conversation about the tiny home question you bring up and really what is the continuum that's broken. And what I hear out of what you're saying is that we're going to talk to Rosa about her connections in DC, and we're all going to go and make this a national issue. So thank you. Councilmember Buchanan, and then Peter, would you close us out?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. First of all, I'm going to talk about what I'm grateful for, and that's, I think Arlene nailed it. I'm grateful of all the work that we've done over the past almost a decade, and the progress that we've made. I think the former us would be very proud of the current us and the work that we've done, just to put it in a weird way. The other thing I look forward to in 2025 is our systems that we came up with the development of the ordinance and all the work that went into the stakeholder advisory committee and the implementation plan process. Those systems have been identified and they're now just starting to get up off the ground, like the JPOP, like the Finance and Facilities Advisory Committee. These are just getting started. I'm excited for that work in 2025 to start really getting the parameters and everything around our Justice Center really vetted and talked about. So I'm grateful most of all for all of you. I think it doesn't happen with all your great work that you've put in over the years. And Rosa, I'm just so excited to have you and Deborah, and our lived experience is so important to have at the table. It was so evident during our conversation about the reentry simulation, how important that is. So looking forward to our work next year.
Okay, my turn. It's funny that an entrepreneur like myself, who had his heart broken in working in downtown and seeing the struggles of people who brought me to this work, to see effective action. That's what I'm all about, is effective action, working with other people to make our community goals. Yet I find myself working on process, and in these meetings. And my goal over the next year is to continue making the best process we possibly can here on the IPRTF, so we have effective action. And any input you have to make that better, I am all ears. And with that, let's go to public comment and we'll close out this meeting. Jill, is there, can you make a call out to any members of the public?
Yes, we have 2 attendees. If either of you would like to speak to the task force, please virtually raise your hand now. And no hands are raised, and I don't see anyone in the conference room with you, Peter.
No, that's true. Okay, and with that, we will close out the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force meeting and the last one of the year. Thank you all so much for the work that you do, and you're part of the 250 that Sat Paul was talking about. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.